Alrighty, let's kick off. Welcome along, everyone. Michael Beresford's my name. I'm here with my good friend and business partner, Cam McClellan, to present to you today golden rules of master investors. Super exciting stuff. For those of you that have seen our monthly webinar series over the last 6 months or so, you'll know that we've interviewed a couple of chief economists, very prominent data and analytics people in Australia. They advise large corporates, the banks, the government, policymakers on what's happening in the marketplace. So we've been trying to bring you up-to-date market data as part of our educational focus that we have here at OpenCorp. But what we've got today is really exciting for Cam and I, because it's kind of a throwback to where we started and the formula that was developed well before we came along. But what we've taken on our journey and what forms the basis for the OpenCorp property investment strategy is exactly this: golden rules of master investors. We've taken key points from a whole range of successful investors and successful people, taken the parts that work for us and formulated into our plan. And no doubt, Jan Summers, who's a personal favourite of Cam's, Tony Robbins, Warren Buffett and Robert Kiyosaki are perfect examples. While they've made their money and been successful in a range of different arenas or industries, there are no doubt some key takeaway messages that we can be adopting as investors, and that's what we want to be sharing with you today. It's a very, very simple process in terms of explanation. There's a lot of detail that fits behind it. We're aiming to cover a bit of both in today. So we'll be delving down below the surface as we go. And here to help me do that is Cam McClellan. As I said, Cam, a super successful guy. 8 companies of his have been in 8 BRW fast growth and fast starter lists. His long-term business partner, Al Lewison, was in the BRW Young Rich list for people under 40. I've known Cam for over 12 years now. It's been a great ride with OpenCorp, and many of you will know him as the best-selling author of My 4-Year-Old The Property Investor. Cam, welcome along. Great to have you on board. We haven't done one of these together for a while. It's
been a couple of months, mate. Thanks for the warm intro. Much appreciated. Likewise, when Michael, obviously one of our business partners, and we joined forces 12 years ago, came from separate sort of parallel investing worlds and merged together back when we wanted to really take OpenCorp to the next level. I think Michael is well known as one of the most sought after commentators, especially around finance and investment advisory through a huge amount of media platforms. So you've probably seen his perfectly groomed hair in many magazines and forums.
Not so perfect in lockdown, man.
What I think it's important to illustrate for those people watching Boz, and AKA Michael is also known as Boz, is that Michael works in OpenCorp on the client-facing side. So on a day-to-day basis, he and his team are interacting with clients. So his knowledge is very relevant on a minute-by-minute basis on what's happening in the market, finance space, and what people need to do to achieve wealth. But the proof's in the pudding, really, for Michael. He himself has helped his own portfolio of clients. I think they're nudging up to about $600 million worth of property in that portfolio. Is that right, Boz?
That's right, yeah.
There you go. So proof's in the pudding. But we've got some exciting, like I said, this is something that's a little bit close to heart. I'll let Boz do the intro, but this is basically a blowback to yesteryear, and we want to give you those core lessons that we learned, which helped us formulate our current investment strategy.
Yeah, exactly right. And look, while there's not rocket science in what we're talking about, part of our goal today is to really simplify the world of investment, because there's this massive information out there. And whenever you get masses of opinions or masses of data that talk in conflicting ways, the most easy thing to do is be confused and do nothing. So that's why we've got the title there. The majority of people do one thing, which is next to nothing, follow yesteryear's investment strategy, retire on the pension. We aim for far better. So 4 key things we're going to be going through today, as we've talked about, taking you through the journey of how we formulated our plan and deep diving into the 4 successful investors. You know, who are they? How do we know them? What have they achieved? How do they do it? And then really breaking down what are the similarities and differences between what Jan, Tony, Warren and Robert have done and what we do. Finally, it's about helping you understand, right, so this knowledge is great. What do I do? How can I apply it? What are the results that, that I can be looking to achieve? Everyone talks about results. Very, very few people, Open Corp accepted, talk about risk. So again, for those of you that have read Cam's book, he's massive about talking about risk. Nothing is risk-free, but we provide a whole range of ways through our strategy and through the kind of guarantees that we offer on how you can mitigate risk and how you can invest as safely and securely as possible moving forward. So that's a snapshot on what we're going to be going through. As I said, there is an abundance of information out there, and I've just picked a few heavy hitters over the last few months around the media and these headlines. Okay, I want to make it really clear. I start by saying this in all of the live presentations that I do and most of the webinars that I do. Our goal over the next 75 minutes or so is to simplify the world of investment. This stuff is not hard. I want you to be asking yourself a question. With the benefit of hindsight, would you have bought a property 35 years ago if you had the opportunity? I'm yet to meet someone that says no. Okay. But what if I told you that if I told you this 35 years ago, that in the next 35 years, we would have a GFC, we'd have coronavirus, that'd be right after 3 really tough years of lending restrictions. There was a recession, there was September 11, there was an Asian financial crisis where international stock markets would lose 60%, and negative gearing would be taken away and brought back within a 2-year period. If I ask that question again, would you invest with the benefit of hindsight? The number drops dramatically. So I'm not sitting here saying that the property market is rosy every day and every week and prices always go up. Not the case. But what we need to be doing is following a long-term strategy. It's not a get-rich-quick solution that we have here. What we want to be doing is making sure that we mitigate risk. We're in the market and mitigating risk through the downturns, whether it's this one or the next one or the one after that, because guaranteed they will come. There is never a perfect time to invest, but we need to understand, and Tony Robbins has got some fantastic data about this that I shared in the last webinar. The longer that you're in the market, the more successful you are. And you even do better with that than if you could time the market perfectly. Okay, so there'll always be headlines, positive or negative, out there. It's really easy to consume all of that and derail your plans. Okay, understand vested interests. The media's vested interest is to sell papers and clicks. Okay, this one, top left-hand corner, property prices plunge across major cities, etc., etc. If you read the first 2 paragraphs, prices have gone down by 0.8%. Don't know about you, I don't call that plunging. Okay, that's a minor blip. So to be fair, what's our vested interest off the bat is to make sure that our clients are getting great service and getting results, which we'll cover off. That way, they're far more likely and able to come back and get their next property and grow their portfolio, and to be able to introduce people in their network to us. And that's been half of our business for the last 10 years. So now you can sit back and relax. There's no catch. There's nothing to sign today. You understand what our vested interest is, and most importantly, hopefully understanding how to eliminate that white noise, because it can derail your success over the long term. So I mentioned that I'd interviewed a couple of chief economists in recent months, specifically Andrew Wilson back in March at the very start of COVID. More recently, about 6 weeks ago, I interviewed Tim Lawless. Andrew is the ex-chief economist for the Domain Property Group in Australia. Tim is the head of Asia Pacific research for RP Data and CoreLogic. So by all means, if you'd like to watch copies of those webinars, shoot Justin in my team an email at at opencorp.com.au. He'll get you copies of those. But just to set the scene for what we're going through, here are some of the key takeouts that we learnt through those interviews. Firstly, we know that Australia was in a very strong position with regards to the property market in the previous 12 months prior to COVID. COVID is not an economic downturn in the sense that it's been caused by the economy and the market or finance. It's been caused by a pandemic. Okay, so the fundamentals don't change overnight, whether it's COVID, whether it's a pause period, and that links into the way that obviously governments have a track record of stimulating and spending in the marketplace. Cam and I actually did a podcast with Phil Tarrant from Smart Property Investment Magazine yesterday or Tuesday, and basically one thing that we talked about on that is the fact that we were telling our clients back in March and April that housing would be the first recipient of government stimulus, because it always is, because it's a fast way for consumer confidence to increase, and it is such a large employment industry in Australia and has tentacles into many of the other large employment industries. That's where they get the best bang for their buck. Okay. We talked about the inflationary effects of US government stimulus post-GFC, where there was plenty relative to the Australia stock market performance, where there was minimal stimulus. You can't put hundreds of billions of dollars or more into the economy without seeing an inflationary effect. We talked about the fact that markets cycle. As I mentioned, prices don't go up every day or every week. Right? The fundamentals of supply and demand are what we focus on, and we're looking at what the government strategy is around that, and specifically what the bank's strategy is to lending. I don't know many people that can build an amazing portfolio without getting a loan at some point in time. So banks and the lending practices are critical to that. We've already covered media, motivation, and influence. So, Cam, Jan Summers was a personal favourite of yours, mate. Why don't you kick off and we'll delve into some of the mentors that have shaped our journey over the years.
Yeah, sure. Jan's obviously considered one of the matriarchs of property investing in Australia. Jump forward if you like, Oz, but I think most famously, I've got a couple of her books here. She's most famous for the Building Wealth series, or More Wealth. There's also a book which I've pulled off the shelf, which you can't get anymore, which is Building Wealth in Changing Times is the title. Now, this is Changing Times just after the reinstatement of negative gearing that was written. So it's funny how times just continually keep changing for property investors. But look, Jan's, the reason I've picked Jan for is really a hat tip to Jan. She's probably the matriarch, if you think back to the first person that really started delivering solid information when it came to investing in Australia. She's self-described as the average millionaire housewife. She was a teacher, maths teacher, I think it was. And when she decided to go and do the more noble job of raising a family and had a little bit of spare time in between raising kids, she decided to pursue her love for property and investing. Once she understood that and she learnt the core strategies, and it's funny being a maths teacher because they're very logical in their thinking process, obviously taking her teaching skills, she put that into a number of books. I think her husband, Terry, I think it's Terry from memory, is
Ian Summers.
Ian Summers, there you go, mate.
Yep.
Thanks for picking me up on that one. Apologies, Terry. Apologies, Ian. But he's a software developer by trade, and what they built is Summersoft Software as a company. So, and it's property investment analysis software. Do you want to give 2 seconds on exactly what that software provides? Because you deal with it daily, mate.
Yeah, so for all of our clients that are on the webinar today, when you see the cash flow summary that says that the property is going to be paying for itself from day one, or costing you $10 a week, or whatever it is, the software that produces those documents was developed by Jan's husband. Yeah,
there you go. The reason I picked Jan is a very respectful hat tip to Jan, and a thank you, I suppose, to the wider community for what she's been able to provide. She gave me my light bulb moment. So everyone in investing at some point goes through a light bulb moment. Mine was when I was 14 years old and saw a VHS video which was lying around my house. I don't know where it came from. I assume one of my dad's mates dropped it off, or but I stuck that in, sat down. For some reason, I was mesmerised by it. not by Jan's attire. I think she was running a pretty tight perm there with a jacket with huge shoulder pads. So she looked definitely in the part back then, but the core lessons that she went through, the core lessons that when I started talking to property investors throughout my coming learning experience over the next probably decade, when I was really trying to educate myself in my early 20s about property investing, those lessons just kept ringing true. So what has she achieved? She built a property portfolio. And the most important thing, this is why we do it. She was able to leave her teaching career and enjoy life. That's what property provided. It provided an outcome for her family. She obviously educates people through her writing, and she's done it by buying and holding growth property, using that growth to duplicate her portfolio. So a very similar strategy to the majority of successful investors I know. It's very easy to say, but getting the fine tuning to be able to do that and do it well with reduced risk is what we'll go through. So core lessons I got from her: being very clear on your net wealth. So understanding where you are today and understanding where that path is going to take you. So you need to be assessing that at every point in time. And that's what Michael and his team do for clients on a daily basis. One that really slapped me in the face, and I think when we go through each of the investors today, I think that one of the driving lessons that you understand is that being a lemming is going to get you the same financial outcome as the majority of Australians. So I know you're big on stats and data, Boz, and I won't bore people with that right now, but the majority of Australians retire below or at the poverty line. So even if they've had huge income salaries and have built up a superannuation in today's land, they chew through that fast, because the higher the salary you're on, the faster you chew into your superannuation, and it doesn't get you to the end line of death, sadly. So by doing something slightly different than the norm and what we teach clients in Open Corp to do, you can not be a lemming, you can actually create something for yourself. She talks strongly about where advice comes from. And this one was really rang true for me. And why I think this really grabbed me at the point when I was a teenager, when I learned, I'd been around school at that point in time, and some of the lessons the teachers were teaching about, here's X amount of money, bet on the share market and see how you come out. This is one of my maths teachers, see how you come out in a couple of weeks. So basically we're able to pick shares and see which went up and down. I thought it was the stupidest investment strategy I could ever come up with. Then I started looking around the car yard at school and realizing the teachers drove pretty mediocre cars, realized that none of them had any financial experience whatsoever. So Jan talks very strongly about financial advisors. Now, we've got an Australian Financial Services license, and I'm not disrespecting anyone I talk about going forward, because they've got very important roles. But historically, Jan talks about it, financial advisors have been salespeople for managed funds. They're not there to build wealth, they're there to preserve wealth. So they spread it across, diversified across managed funds is the simplest and safest way that they've got access to. The way Jan describes it, and I'm paraphrasing here, but if you're going to buy a car, and back in the day there was Ford and Holden, so if you go to a Ford dealership and expect to buy a Holden, you're not going to find one. If you go to a financial advisor, financial planner, historically they recommend share portfolios, not property portfolios. Very similarly, and full respect for accountants, because accountants, I've got a team of accountants that work for me full time, and many different external accounting firms that work for me. Accountants have a very important role, but they're not financially secure themselves and not licensed to give financial advice, especially when it comes to property and investing. So understand where advice comes from was a really important one. So I went out and spent a heap of money over the next decade buying lunches for old grey-haired investors and picking the eyes out of the information out of them. So one thing that, and I'll go through, and you can see I'm obviously passionate about the lessons that I learned from Jan, but one thing that rings true and I'll stick by is land appreciates and buildings depreciate. The building's only purpose is to provide rental income to cover the appreciating asset, being the land. So she buys property, uses taxation benefits and holds for growth. She uses that growth to duplicate, and that provides compound growth and wealth. Once again, really easy to say it in one sentence, takes a decade or so to do it. Yeah. Is that about right, Boz, on that line?
That's about right. We'll take you through exactly how that works if some of those terms are new to you.
Perfect. The thing that rang true with me also with Jan is that, and I'm obviously in business, and yes, I appreciate the the trumpet blowing at the start for me, Boz, about business. I'm very successful at business because I like to simplify things. But in business, I invest in two things. I invest in good people and robust process. And by combining those two things, I get a measured outcome. So investing in property, it amazed me that people invest in property and make the biggest financial choice of their lifetime by the whim of an oily rag. Just literally, they'll go down to local real estate agent, or Uncle Bob tells them to buy something, and that's the most research they go into it. So when you read through Jan's teachings, really her process is about reducing options, reducing risk, and improving the end result, the end outcome. So she teaches investing in property the same way that business people apply process. And as I've always said, property investing is a business. It needs to be. Good old Rob Kiyosaki. Another one of my favourite early days, and obviously for those who don't know, Robert Kiyosaki is the author of the Rich Dad series. He's got quite a number of books out. The first one, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, basically goes through the story of a tale of two dads. So he's got his biological father, who's poor, grew up in Hawaii, and then he's got his friend's dad, who is an successful investor. Now, what Robert's basically the core fundamentals of his teachings were, and he writes with a lot of flair. Don't take it wrong. You know, he's definitely got a lot of American flair in his writings, and I'd say some of the stories are stretched a little bit, but they, what's the old saying? Never let the truth get in the way of a good story. But his teachings have really solid core fundamentals. He pushes people to break the mold. He challenges things like school smarts versus money smarts, which is something that I challenge to a degree, not probably to the nth degree that he does. I left school and I went to high school and then tech school, and left school with very little education because I thought I was going to go out and invest in property, and I wasn't getting the education at school that I needed. But I do a lot of speaking for year 12 kids nowadays, teaching them about, I do run a money smarts course, which is basically goes through not so much property, but talks about the mistakes that you can make in money and how to be smart about making money and the core value of money and debt, good debt, bad debt, those sort of things. But I don't push the fact that street smarts is better than school smarts. The reality is both complement each other. I've spent millions of dollars over the years on accountants and lawyers learning their trade, which I could have got for a cheaper education amount that if I had have buckled up at school. Anyway, Rob's one I caught. Jump to the next slide if you wouldn't mind, Michael. So what's he achieved? He's made his investment in education is basically his main channel of income. Best-selling author. He's very sought after. He did the motivational speaking circuit for quite a number of years. I'm lucky enough to meet him when he came to Melbourne a couple of decades ago, 15 years ago, I suppose it was now. But in his teachings, he pushes the fact that he fails a number of times in business, and he just picks himself up and keeps trying. So he learns from his mistakes, and the core lesson that he promotes is that he learnt all of his lessons. No one creates wealth off a blank canvas, or very few, maybe a tech person who creates Facebook or something like that. But very few people create wealth. It's a lot safer to understand a strategy, follow a strategy that reduces risk than it is to create something yourself. So he went out in his book, and his main teaching is that he found a mentor to take him along the journey. And from that point, he was able to learn the basics about money. And I think that's one of the key lessons the majority of the investors that we'll go through today really push forward. So use a mentor, never gave up. So his core lesson, if you fail 9 times, but the 10th time you succeed, well, the other 9, if they haven't hurt you financially and ruined you, well, they're sort of irrelevant. But one thing he does go through, and this is one of the lessons I also teach in the Money Smarts course, which you can download off our website actually, is that his book, The Cash Flow Quadrant, really outlines the 4 sources of money, where money comes from, how money's used. So the 4 sources of money really quickly, earned income, so time exchange for money earned, self-employed, so you bought yourself a business, you've started one, or it's the same as being an employee. You have a business, so you have people working in a business that basically allow you to work passively, but money continually comes in. Regardless of those 3, one thing he drills home, and I'm a strong believer in, regardless of where you get your money from, you need to be investing. The most powerful quadrant of money is investing, because you cannot get compound growth off earned income. It just doesn't happen. So that's one of the key. So get a mentor, and compound growth is Robert's big wave flags.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Cam. I can see a few people are, I presume, leaving questions or got things to say, guys. If you do, we'll have Q&A at the end. Please leave questions in there, and whatever time we've got at the end, happy to answer those along with Cam. Just obviously because of COVID and the fact that we're geographically dislocated and the tech restrictions with that, I can't pull those questions up as we're going. Answer them on the fly. So yeah, we'll just wanted to let you know we'd seen them. We'll come to them at the end.
I'll just sort of kid out, mate. Continue on. I'll be back in literally under a minute.
Tony Robbins. I'm sure most of us have heard, or at least early '90s. Seen the classic infomercials that Tony Robbins did. Basically, he's a larger than life. Started out as a self-improvement personal development coach. That's transformed into mentor, both at a large scale through his seminars. Unleash the Power Within, Date with Destiny. Some of the different courses that he runs. Amazing experience having been to one of those myself. But now he's transitioned over his journey into business, and it's not well understood that he is just as successful in business as what he was and is with his personal development stuff. So he's written 6 books. One of them even on the number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list, and his contact list is pretty impressive. He actually personally mentors billionaires. You need to be a billionaire probably to afford him. He's $1 million a year for 12 half-hour sessions. Clearly results-focused guy, and really came to life by doing these infomercials where he'd actually take live calls. People would ring up with their challenge or their problem or their hurdle, and he'd fix it right then and there. A couple of the classics on YouTube, if you want something to look at this afternoon or on the weekend, in literally 8 minutes, helps this English guy get his head right with regards to his marriage and effectively saves his marriage. And they've got befores and afters and discussions with his wife. Another one, I forget how long it was. I think it was 30 years. This other guy had been stuttering for. He identified the kind of self-preservation mechanism that was holding this guy back, and within, again, 10 to 12 minutes, startup fixed, just like that. So really used the power of demonstration to do it. A super successful guy, and reached a lot of people with his key messages and teachings. Okay, the core lesson for Tony, right? You got to set your goals. You got to stretch yourself. Mindset is everything, and get out of your comfort zone. It wasn't Tony, I believe, but a quote that I personally love. You have to start being happy being uncomfortable rather than comfortable being unhappy. And nothing is truer because, as we said earlier, there's never a perfect time to invest in terms of what we do, right? There's never a perfect time to do anything. Think about the first time that you went back to the gym after a period of time. I've got 2 young kids. My wife went back to teaching for the first time in 4.5 years at the start of this year, and it was like she was turning up for her first day all over again, right? It's never easy, but the longer that you leave it, the harder it gets. And a positive mindset is all that's required to separate super successful from average. So some great core lessons from Tony, and there'll be more from him as we go through. Personal favorite, Warren Buffett. You might be thinking, well, why would Warren Buffett be a personal favorite if he invests in the share market and you guys invest in property? Warren doesn't actually invest in the share market. He invests in companies. Very, very big difference. And I call him the king of compound growth. So that's what he is. He's got a company called Berkshire Hathaway. They basically invest money for their clients following his proven process. He's the most successful investor of our time and consistently been in the top 5, generally the top 3 of the richest people in the world. So until Amazon went bananas and Facebook's grown to the point that it is, Bezos and Zuckerberg have jumped above him in the richest person list. But he's still worth $70 billion today. What a lot of people don't realise is that's after he's given over $40 billion away to various charities that he supports. So add that in, he'd well and truly be in the top three. But the reason why he's the king of compound growth, he's got some famous sayings that we'll see as we go through. The best holding period is forever, things like that. Just think about, and I'll take you through what compound growth is later on today. But the reason why he's consistently in the rich list, whether it's the right time to be investing or not the right time to be investing in different companies that fit his model, is purely because of compound growth. So let's go back to the days when Warren was worth $50 billion. Let's say that he, round numbers, got a 10% return. He's exceeded that, but just for simplicity, he got a 10% return on that over the course of the next 12 months. That means that his net wealth went up by $5 billion, whether he made other investments or not that may even escalate that. The year after, he had 10% on $55 billion, and that grew as well. So while every year won't be fantastic in the share market, just like it's not with the property market, the power of compound growth and the fact that he's, if not in his 90s, very, very close to it, he's been doing it for so long is why he's consistently in those high earners. One thing that he's very, very big on, which is a massive takeaway for me, and it's something I remind myself almost on a daily basis, is he's never distracted by the next best thing. Right? Mates, people you talk to, business associates go, hey, I heard this. Your mate says, hey, I've picked the winner in race 3, like it's a sure thing. He doesn't get distracted with that. He has his formula and he sticks to the formula. He's got his recipe, doesn't mess with it. He knows that it gets results. And part of his formula is around not only the track record, but things like the management teams of the companies that he invests in, and the fact that there are ongoing stable demand for the products and services of the companies that he invests in. There are a few there in brackets. Banks, insurance companies, men have to shave every day, right? Gillette, soft drinks, especially in America, Coca-Cola, those companies aren't going anywhere. So while they might not see a doubling or a tripling in their share price in a 4 to 5 week period, if you manage to, get lucky and pick the best deal of a lifetime, he's far more about stable, mitigating risk and buying counter-cyclically. So again, you will have heard us say, be greedy when people are fearful and fearful when people are greedy. That's what he does. Evidence that his net wealth went up $6 billion over the last 8 to 10 weeks through COVID, because he bought when people were fearful. Confidence came back, that increased demand, and his investments went up in value. We'll touch on diversification as well later on, but I want to be really clear on what diversification is as far as Warren's concerned and as far as what we're concerned. Diversification is not spreading your investments across a whole range of different asset classes, because some will, the age-old adage, some will perform, some will underperform, but if you balance it out, then you'll get a decent result. Warren said something like diversification is the best way for the masses to get a little bit ahead. Okay. Warren doesn't diversify. He follows exactly the same process and applies that into different companies. Very, very big difference. And he said that you shouldn't be investing in companies, or shares if you don't know the fundamentals of business and if you can't read financial reports and interpret that information in terms of what it means. So that's a really good lead into the snapshot on the similarities and differences of our core tenets. Okay. As you can see, the vast majority there are direct similarities. Tony Robbins' success mindset and realistically the success mindset of all of those 4 people, the fact that they take action. They're doing something to improve their process or their result. They're not being a lemming. They are mitigating risk. It's not necessarily about picking the massive winner. It's about making sure you don't pick a loser and investing for the long term. I mentioned diversification versus diversification. Know exactly what you're doing and apply it, in Warren's case, across different companies, in our case, across different locations. We'll share some numbers with you shortly. The vast majority of Australians invest in the postcode that they live in. That means you've got all of the eggs in the basket of the performance of the suburb that you live in. Okay, that's punting on the market to a big degree. Talked about long-term focus. We'll cover compound growth, which is basically growth on top of growth. And Robert and Tony especially, along with Jan, very big on the power of mentorship, and Jan's old favourite of duplicate the process. If it's worked once, why not repeat it? You've just got to understand how. The one big difference is that the 4 mentors that we talked about, well, Jan accepted, the 3 others have done stuff with business and the share market. We're in property. That's about the only difference. The rest is the right kind of required formula to get that result. So what I'll just take you through quickly here is, what is the process that most people apply when it comes to investing? As Cam said earlier, there is no process. Someone tells them about a really good buy. Think about if you or people you know have been away on holiday. It's amazing how many holiday homes get bought in January, right? Because people are loving the downtime. They love the seaside town that they're in. They think they'll buy a property there because of how great they feel emotionally about being on holiday. In reality, they use it a lot less than what they think. As a result, it becomes an underperforming investment for them.
I did that, Boz. I had a portfolio already, but it definitely hasn't been a good performer. It's a great place to go. But
you probably got a bit of street cred before you made that mistake, so we'll let you off the hook. I was thinking while you're talking about before, we should do a webinar about the books on your bookshelf, by the way, because you've taken a fair few off in the last month while we've been formulating this, and there are still plenty there. So
yeah, I've rotated a few. I've read a few books in the last period of time as well.
Absolutely. Speaking of which, if you haven't read Cam's book, My 4-Year-Old The Property Investor, everything that we've talked about with regards to our strategies in it, our team will get in touch. Happy to get you a copy of that as well if you're looking for a book to read in at whatever stage of lockdown you're in. But back to this. Process is the difference between being an investor with one property and being an investor with a portfolio. Okay. Now, the Australian population today is more like 25.6 million people. However, this data is, the ATO don't release it every year. This data goes back a couple of years to when they released it, when the Australian population was a bit over 24 million. Those of us that actually invest make up less than 9% of the population. Okay. So again, we talked about, if you do the same thing, expect the same result. You know, you've got to step out of your comfort zone and do something differently to the masses. No surprise that 90% of the Australian population retire on the pension. The other 10% or thereabouts are investing in property. So let's understand how to do it better. Of that 8.7% though, of us that invest in property in Australia, the vast majority, okay, only have one investment. Now, don't get me wrong, one property is far better. If you just bought a property 30 years ago, you're going to be so far better off than if you hadn't, that it's not funny, okay? So one is definitely better than none, but there is a much more powerful way to do this very, very well, which is what we'll get through. The vast majority of the remainder, less than 2% of the Australian population, have two investments. And you can see there that the numbers shrink pretty dramatically when we're talking about those that get to 5 or 6 investments or more. It's a fraction of 1% of the Australian population that get there. When we look at across not only the the directors of Open Corp, but our staff as well. We've got a team of, close to 40 property enthusiasts working in our business across the different divisions. And when we look across our clients as well, even though we've been around for a relatively short period, we've got 16 people amongst us as part of that 20,000 that have 6 or more. So when we talk about the tried and true proven process that we apply, that's exactly what we're going to be sharing with you today. But the most important thing is it's about a growth mindset. The first thing that you're probably thinking about is I was taught to, and I was brought up to think about debt as the devil. Yep. Without doubt, that's how our parents thought, because that's how they were taught by their parents. Okay. The reason for that is that because 91.3% of the Australian population either rent or own their own home, the only debt they've ever got is being serviced 100% out of their pocket. So, yep, that debt is bad because it's really expensive to hold, and that's why you want to get rid of it as quickly as possible. But what if that debt didn't make any difference to your lifestyle? Because and based on...
Can anyone hear Boz? I can't at this point in time. I should say...
Look at debt a little bit differently. I mentioned my 4-year-old just before, Ken. That's probably a question I've got for you. What was you wrote it, close to 10 years ago now, or you started it close to 10 years ago now.
Yep.
What was the rationale for writing the book in the first place?
It's a good point. I think it was about 10 years ago now. So I think Open Corp's been around about 15 years. I think we've got about 40 staff, and over half of those have got 6 or more investments. So the process that's followed, and they follow through, and our clients follow, works, which is obviously good. And I'm sure you go through some of the track record of client results that we've got later on. The rationale, though, I was going over to Hawaii on it was a business trip at the time with Al, a business partner. And I just had Hannah, who was, she was just born at that stage, but that was the concept where I went, I need to write an investment journal. And I think over the next couple of years, by the time I'd finished it, she was 4. So since the name my 4-year-old, the property investor. But I said to Felicity, I'm going to write a journal just on all the basics I've learned over the last decade or so, and all the information that I've got from my mentor and all the different people I've talked to. But the reason I wrote the book, because there was nothing in the marketplace like it. There's some fantastic books, and I've done a hat tip to Jan, some of her literature today. But what I felt was missing from every book out there in the marketplace was they gave a general overview. Some tried to get a little bit too fancy and a bit connected. I wanted to simplify things, but there was two more important things that I wanted to do. So the overview of the property industry. Then I wanted to set out the process. Like I talked business before, the set process I follow every time I pick a property. But not only that, I wanted to attach check sheets and include those in the book so that they could be used. So Hannah at the time, and now other kids, if I fall off the perch, they can follow that book. And there you go, the straight line to wealth is the process I followed. I heard that the fastest way to any given point is a straight line. So that's what I created when I outlined the process within the book. So it goes through the idea, setting up your team. So setting up your team is obviously very important. Accountants, conveyancers, mentors, solicitors. And I talked before about accountants. Very, very important with accountants that you pick the right accountants. Same again with with brokers. Many brokers are out there that are able to provide home loans. Very few set up the finance for investment finance the way that it should be set up for investors. The way that finance should be set up for investor duplicate is about as polar opposite to the way the banks and brokers like to set it up. Similarly with accountants, it's taken me years to find the accounting team that I have. Best analogy, Boz, I suppose, would be accountants are like doctors. If you've got a sore eye and you go and find a foot doctor to operate on your eye, it's not going to be a good outcome. Accountants are similar. There are accountants, especially those in business, normal tax returns in property and investment. So be sure that you find the right account. Referral's the best way. Finance pre-approval is really important. Now, I'm skipping over these, but each of these points has risk. And in the book, a 4-year-old book, it's got check sheets that I attach to those so that people can reduce risk and stay on track. I haven't even got to identifying the investment yet. I think you're going to do a bit later on identifying the investment.
Yeah, we'll share with everyone exactly what our process is for identifying the investment. But I think that's a really good point. Is that it's not until step 4 in a 9-step process that you actually start to think about what the property is.
Yeah, and I think
some steps that have to come before that. And the first one right up front around the idea is exactly what Jan Summers was talking about. Around be clear on where you are now, be very clear on where you want to get to. Exactly. Pretty easy to be able to get from point A to point B when you're aware of what those things are. Requires some structure, requires an outline, as opposed to I'll just buy that and hope that it gets you the right result down the track.
Very, very true. And as Michael said, we've talked about a fair bit now, and we haven't even got to identifying the investment. Then we've got contracts, actually getting finance, settlement, tenancy. But the key one is duplication. All of the first 8 points just get you to the point where you've got something that's paying for itself. And then comes in the whole realm of duplication. So there's a whole process behind that, which I call the circle of duplication. The reason was, I hope that outlines why. I mean, it's the #1 selling property investment book in Australia currently. And if I just remind you, Boz, I don't think you've heard this before, but back when it was released for a couple of years, it was on the bestseller list for about just over 12 months. I think I sat for 9 months at number 4, just under 50 Shades of Grey. Romance versus property investment, mate. I still say, what hope did I have? But anyway, there you go. I'll blow my own trumpet with my book well enough. So
you might have to write another one. I'll give you that lace out handball for later as well. Right. But we talked about process. We want to keep it moving. There's a lot to get through. We talked about the process that we apply. Yes, it's a 9-step process. It's a bit more complex than just 9 steps. But in the back of Cam's book, there are all those check sheets and steps that have to be ticked off, and that's basically what our team here, and specifically our research and analytics team, are looking at all day, every week, around identifying the investments for our clients. So we'll drill into the property identification criteria, but here is just something that we are very proud of. We talked about the fact that it works, and we talked about the fact that, like Warren Buffett, our clients are beating the market significantly. So the property selection process that we have, and not only formulating and tweaking it, refining it over time, but like we said, we didn't come up with it. It was working for Jan Summers. It was working for others of our mentors, these grey-haired investors that Cam talked about previously. We've just taken and tweaked it, and clearly getting a better outcome for our clients. So
I should just point out that there has been question just on the data in 2018. The results are actually a lot better than that for our clients. If you do the current run, it's a huge effort to go through the thousands of properties that our clients have got and compare that with the 8 capital city markets. We had to do it for a submission for a fund to ASIC for one of our product disclosure statements under our financial services license. So it's a comparison that was done in 2018. Probably should be done again, because those results for our clients would be much, much better.
Yep. Yeah, market's definitely seen growth since 2018. But you're exactly right. That was, just to put it into context for everyone, it was a submission to ASIC, as Cam said, on the track record and performance over the properties that we'd sourced for clients in the 10 years prior. So when you look at what the Australian capital city average performance was over that time frame compared to the total return performance that we've achieved, the capital growth component of that was 37% ahead of where the Australian capitals were. So in terms of some fundamental concepts that we're going to break down and go through. As Jan said, land appreciates, buildings depreciate. Simply put, don't buy apartments. Great for depreciation, because most of the money is in the part that drops in value, doesn't grow in value at the same rate that land-based investments do. So that one's pretty simple, tried and true. Saying within property, let's stick to land-based investments. We'll go through the 5 core fundamentals next, and then we'll cover off what that proven selection process is, as I talked about. Cam, you love the story around the early properties you had went up in value more than what you earned in a 12-month period. Do you want to share with everyone the 5 key investment rules?
Yeah, more than happy to, Boz. I think this was once again each stage. So I had a light bulb moment to know that I had to invest. I knew that I was going to be a property investor. A really big light bulb moment. I was lucky that Steve Lewison, well, that's pretty impressive, Boz. Steve Lewison, my first property mentor, still sits on the board of a couple of our companies. Grabbed us, like I said, by the scruff of the neck and threw us into property investing at early teen year or late teen years, early 20s. But I purchased, I think I was earning $22,000 a year at that point in time. The first property I bought, by the time I'd settled on it 3 months later, had gone up $40,000. So I got it revalued. So very much a big light bulb moment. So if you look at Michael's drawing there, I had if that represents the loan of a house, I've got some deposit and costs down the bottom there. And then I required and mixed in with some other people's money. And after that, I got some equity. Now, using other people's money, people don't like debt, but obviously if it's going up in value, it's called good debt. So using other people's money, I used the equity growth in that and property for the deposit and costs of my next property. So I only ever saved for my first deposit, actually sold my HQ back at the time, rode a bike for 9 months while I sacrificed. So people don't sacrifice as hard as they used to back in the day, but anyway, that's another whole story, mate. So I used that equity and put it into the deposit and costs for my next property. Now, as those properties got growth once again, and this is obviously called duplication. So took my money, the bank's money, got some equity, used that for deposit and costs of the next property. Now, the balance that you need to get nowadays is making sure you get enough balance so the properties hold their own costs. We like growth properties that are very little to cost to hold to start with and are positively geared very soon after. And in today's lending landscape, they're pretty much positive for every one of our clients that comes through the door. So I got equity, used other people's money, further growth that allowed me to duplicate. I then got growth on both of those properties and then duplicated again. So that comes to the 9th wonder of the world, 8th wonder of the world, isn't it, Boz? As Einstein said.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
That's more growth into further duplication, which gives us compound growth.
There you go.
Exactly right.
Einstein's book, it was the most boring book I'd read until I read Johnny Howard's. No disrespect to Johnny, but very, very boring book. But there's a lot of good takeaways out of it. And compound interest was the term he used. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. It was written a while ago. I would have said he or she. Anyway.
Indeed. So there they are. The 5 key investment rules. Pretty simple. As one property goes up, use that equity, repeat the process. So if you've ever heard of sayings like, buy a property with no money down or no cash out of your pocket, that's how we do it. Yes, we pay interest on the equity that we borrow, but the properties, as Cam said, they pay for themselves. That's after you're paying the interest on the equity. So don't think that your mortgage is going up. It's not. The mortgage stays the same. We borrow the equity and the cash flow is factored into the investment from there. But just to take you, so that's just a bit of a visual without the benefit of a whiteboard. Those of you that have seen our 300 WODs know that I love a whiteboard. So just so you can get a visual. But compound growth, this is why it's so powerful. I think the slide's just taking a little bit of time to load.
Yeah, you phased out a bit before, so yeah, I had to do like a dance in the background to keep people entertained.
Oh, right. Let me try it this way then.
You can see from that example, though, why those light bulb moments are really important to investors. If you consider that earning in 3 months double your annual wage really showed me that was off one property. When you've got multiple properties that go through that growth cycle, life changes.
Yep. Exactly right, and it's caught up. What is compound growth? So the example that I use, we'll give you a money example next, but the example that I use to simply understand and explain this concept is that of apple trees. Okay, so let's say, right, that we've got weeks across the top, and let's say that we buy an apple tree this afternoon, and when we buy the apple tree, it's got 1 apple on it. Okay. Now let's say that every week that we hold this apple tree for, it doubles its production. So after week 2, obviously it's got 2 apples. After week 3, we've got 4 apples. Now, we're not exactly setting the world on fire here with our apple production. Wouldn't even feed Cam's family after 3 weeks, right? So if you think about what happens at this time with most investors, they haven't seen a return by 10 o'clock tomorrow, so they lose interest, right? Compound growth is get very, very rich slowly. It is not get rich quickly. So when we talk about safe and secure and long term, that's what we mean. But over time, as you can see, things start to improve a bit. And a month after you bought the apple tree, you've got 8 apples compared to 1. Now, think about what most people would do. If this is a house and you've started to see some growth, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars here, what do you think most people would do at this point in time? They would sell. Right? And what they do is they uproot that apple tree and they cash in a few apples, but they lose the power of compound growth, and they don't realize that if they'd just held it for the next unit of time, they would have made the same amount as what they'd made since the start. Right? And it doesn't matter at whichever week you do that, you make the same, in the next week, you make the same amount as you did in the first 5 weeks in this example. And likewise, so on and so forth. Okay. So again, if you could invest in something, in this case, an apple tree, where several weeks down the track, you'd seen 64 times the amount of growth than what you saw in week 1, that's pretty powerful. Okay. But what's better than one apple tree doing this? Multiple apple trees doing the same thing. And if you had 3 of these apple trees that you just acquired when you could, then, and you held them all through to the end of week 7, then collectively, the compound growth of those apples gets you just under, bottom right-hand corner, just under 200 apples in that next week. So again, when do most people want to see a financial return? 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Doesn't happen. Most people are going to get frustrated and lose interest. It requires patience, it requires some discipline and some commitment, but over the medium to long term, the results are tremendously powerful.
Yeah, I remember Felicity early days asking me why we've got all these properties and we're still living in a half renovated house, and felt like we had no money. Then all of a sudden the market moved.
Indeed. Yeah, pour some fertiliser on those apple trees.
Yeah, seriously.
So, this is my favourite way to simply explain the concept and the power of compound growth, right? And as you can see here, some of the books and some of the authors that we haven't referred to in this presentation on the other end of the spectrum would write books that suggested you needed a massive portfolio just to be a successful property investor. Not the case.
Correct.
What you need to be doing is holding low cost to hold building blocks that give you compound growth over time. Okay. Cam, your favourite example of compound growth?
Yeah, I love this one. If you move forward, so I use this example out at the secondary schools. This is an example that Steve Lewison, my first property mentor, gave me, and it's probably 20, 25 years ago now when I first started talking to Steve. But day one, if you've got, if you invest a cent every day and it doubles so 1 cent the first day and it doubles, so the day one of compounding, it's worth 2 cents, and then every day after that it compounds. The end of the first week, you got $1.28. Not too exciting. If we continue to hold that, even by week 2, it's only at $163. Starting to get a bit more exciting by day 21. This is what happens when compounding really kicks in. So by day 28, so just compounding 28 times the 1 cent, you're at the best part of $2.5 million, just over. What's really exciting with this concept is you tack on 3 more days and look what happens. So as Michael said, it's really important. People get bored with investing in the first 4 or 5 years, start questioning why they're doing it. Just sit there and enjoy life because it's coming. And that's why we like to invest across multiple states to catch the growth of each capital city. So the power of compound growth, Warren Buffett's saying, the old favorite. What's the favorite holding period? Forever. Just let it roll.
Indeed. We all know those stories when people have said, oh, if only I didn't sell that property, 15 years ago, what would it be worth today? That's the life saying that talks about, sure, they did all right. If they held it for a long period of time, they would have sold it for a lot more than they bought it for. But they sure missed out on a hell of a lot more if they'd just held that property.
Yeah, the beautiful thing with property going up in value, it covers all costs, things like land tax, those sort of things. The rent and the equity increase covers the expenses. So people start to think about the expenses and what it's going to be worth to hold all this portfolio. And that's what Felicity used to be concerned with. The reality is the equity growth dwarfs any of those costs.
Yeah. The other thing that we haven't covered here is that the income continues to grow as well in terms of the passive income.
Correct.
So Robert Kiyosaki talks about, reinvesting, and he didn't use the words compounding per se, but that's exactly the concept he was getting to, is reinvesting that, over the course of time with the rent going up. Even if a property costs you a very, very small amount, $50 a week or less out of your pocket day one, pretty quickly it becomes cash flow neutral. And then it becomes cash flow positive. So not only is the growth massively powerful, but you're getting, the growth is for free because it's not costing you a lot of money, and it's bringing in passive income as well. So
really quickly, boss, I think one thing that's important, which came through in the last election, a lot of people talk about negative gearing. I won't go into it greatly, but negative gearing, people think about these rich property investors taking advantage of their negative gearing and taxation breaks. Rich property investors don't use negative gearing. All the investors I know who have held their portfolio for a while are cash flow positive. You can't use negative gearing anymore. The average wage for someone who uses negative gearing is $87,000. So the last election was lost going after negative gearing because it's the everyday person that's just trying to get their first foot in the door that uses negative gearing. So just wanted to point that one out because the evil property investors, we don't need it.
It's a really good point, though. The way that I explain negative gearing, my thoughts on negative gearing, the way I explain it to clients, it's really just an advance on your pension. So if you don't take control of your own financial situation and invest in whatever you invest in, then you're going to be part of that 91.3%, that are getting the pension, and the government's going to have to be paying that.
Yeah.
So negative gearing is basically, right, you're taking control of your situation and going to be a self-funded retiree on clearly a really amazing outcome based on compound growth over the long term. Will give you a bit of benefit to allow you to hold those properties, and alleviate a pension problem for us down the track is the way that they see it.
Hey, really quickly, in one sentence, could you explain negative gearing?
Yeah, so negative gearing, it's not a negative at all. It's actually quite a positive thing. It is the ability to reduce the amount of income that you have to pay tax on through the deductions that you get with investment property. So very, very simple example. Let's say that you earn 90K. On that 90K, you have to pay tax of about $21,000 a year. If you are able to bring your taxable income down to, say, 60K, and the amount of tax payable on 60K is, say, $13,000 a year, then the difference between the 13 and the 21 in tax payable, which is $8,000, that's what would come back to you in your pocket each year to put together with the rent to cover all the holding costs on the property.
Thank you.
Cool. So, proven selection process. We talked about step 4 in the straight line to wealth was around identifying the investment. How do we identify it? What are the criteria? What does it look like? This is what it looks like. Due to time, I'll whiz through it pretty quickly. It's a lot more complex than 10 dot points on one slide. We've got a team that are analysing all of these key criteria. We put together a 15 to 16 page research brief for every single client around their recommendation and how it fits our MAP process. But effectively what we're talking about here is a process of elimination. So again, good throwback to Jan Summers. She talked about trying to eliminate large amounts of property so you can focus in a smaller subset. Our elimination process is what we call MAP. Stands for Market Area Property. if we think about what drives growth in anything, it's supply and demand. So if you take nothing else away from today, other than supply and demand, take action, and compound growth, that's it. These are the core tenets of exactly what we're talking about. So you can see there, we only stick to and only invest in the 4 main capital cities. Why? Because they've got the least amount of land and the most amount of people, the most diverse employment generators. Quite frankly, I don't care if a new Coles is being built in Ballarat because of some reason, right? That is not going to give you the same inherent upwards pressure on supply and demand as what an existing suburb in the middle ring of a major capital city is going to give you.
Correct.
Okay. We look at the market cycles. It makes no sense to be buying at the top of a cycle once it's seen its boom. That's why the lending restrictions came in. The banks got nervous. APRA got nervous because 60% of the property purchases back in February 2017 in Sydney were after the market had seen over 90% growth in the 5 years prior. Okay. So again, don't go chasing get rich quick and buying at the top of the market. Invest counter-cyclically. Exactly like Warren says. Be greedy when people are fearful and fearful when people are greedy. We look at macroeconomic factors, employment generation, government strategy, supply and demand, planning, government infrastructure and spend, etc. It's actually quite simple when you understand what the government strategy is on where they're going to be channeling the population and what the drivers are for that to determine where that population growth and that demand is going to come from. We talk about median house price potential. We could probably talk about that for half an hour or 45 minutes alone. It's in Cam's book. Basically, in order for us to be able to realise the equity that we've created, think back to those 5 fundamentals, the equity based on the capital growth, we are dependent on the valuations that we can get for our assets. And therefore, it becomes fundamental to understand how the valuers operate and the process that they go through to determine a property's worth. It's all linked to median house price and where we can get some upside there. Once we've worked out which capital city market or markets make sense at any point in time, we can then start to narrow down and focus on which are the areas, suburbs, growth corridors, principal activity centres, etc., that have exactly those same drivers that are in the market. Okay, you probably noticed I haven't talked about the colour of the tiles or the type of fence on the property just yet. Okay, to be frank, we're not here to love these properties. We're here to apply a proven process where they are low cost to hold and we are mitigating risk as a result, where they tick a whole bunch of boxes that are proven drivers for capital growth. We talk about supply and demand on a local level. We want to be in what we call infill areas, which are existing suburbs surrounded by established housing. Okay? Hence why no regional centres, large tracts of land that they could open up even if there was a massive influx of demand, which there generally isn't. Okay, so we want an undersupply pressure with over excesses of demand. That's what gives us the growth. Every property book, Jan's property book, Cam's property book, and every single other one under the sun talks about the amenities, schools, shops, public transport and recreation, right? They're important. Any established area in Australia is going to have them. We build pretty good cities, okay? So definitely tick that box, but there are some more important things that come first. Think back to your early days, Cam, of investing.
Yeah.
I hear it from clients every day. What do you think was, or what's the most common concern that most people have when it comes to investing in property? What are they most fearful of not having?
Not having, are you talking about optimum size quality in that sense?
Well, it's linked to that. Yeah, so if you're not appealing to a tenant, you're not going to be getting rental income.
Yeah, you're making a guess here. You're leading me towards an answer. Give me more of a clue. I've got
There must be a lag on the video, mate. I said just around vacancy and tenancy. So obviously rental income.
Yeah, gotcha. Rental income. Yeah, if you've got the fear of rental income, obviously you're worried about the only source of income to pay for that is your job.
Exactly right. So prevention is better than cure. We want to make sure that we've got that rental income coming in consistently, week in, week out.
Yeah.
Okay. The way that we do that is just a variant on supply and demand. And it's all about buying in areas where the majority of homes in the area are owner occupied. Two reasons. Number one, it gives us a relative lack of rental supply. So if we're in a quality area that's got demand, we've always got rental demand, and that allows us to drive rental growth up over time. The second thing that it gives us is more people that are looking after their property and spending money improving their property, which gives us better comparable sales. So if we are buying for value here around owner occupiers that have spent more on their house, that's pulling the value of our property up, which is giving us capital growth, which is creating equity, which is allowing us to then use that equity to duplicate back to those 5 fundamentals. Okay. Optimum size and quality, we could talk about that for an hour as well. In short, you want to make sure, doesn't matter whether the property's brand new, established, whatever it might be, an apartment, optimum size and quality is critical because developers, builders, and homeowners all have this belief that bigger is better. Bigger just adds cost. I'm not saying that we want small and boxy, nor do we want cheap and nasty, but optimum size and quality is how big does the house have to be to suit a family tenant because they're the most stable kind of tenant? How much do we have to spend, or what's the quality of the specification that we need to have inside that property to appeal to a wide range of tenants, and what part is just overspending unnecessarily?
Basically, it's the method of not overcapitalising.
Yeah.
So you think about it, the most easy way to do it. So our team, and I'll see them with tape measures around our boardroom and trying to work out sizes of rooms to get the optimum size and quality for any area. And the simplest way I'll talk to people if they say they want a media room or they want to expand a bedroom is, imagine if a house is 20 metres long, if you can take 500 mil off it, but no one living in it or the valuer would deem it any less value in rental yield or valuation. Well, by bringing 500 mil over 20 metres, you're saving yourself 10 grand. So a media room might be nice or a little bit more of a spacious bedroom, but if your valuation's coming in the same, really you're getting that 10 grand and you're throwing it in a metal garbage bin and you're setting it on fire.
Yeah. No different to buying an investment at auction. All you're doing is paying more than the next person for a property that's only going to bring in a set amount of rent, and that increases your holding cost, right? And based on the power of compound growth that you now understand, if you're investing in a property that costs you $100 a week compared to investing in a property that pays for itself, or worst case costs you $50 a week, that might not seem like a big deal, but the impact is far bigger than the $50 a week. The impact is having that second apple tree giving you compound growth over time.
Correct.
So now you're starting to understand why optimum size and quality is critical to make sure that the properties are low cost to hold, and therefore you can have easily hold a number of investments in your portfolio without impacting your lifestyle and it requiring a lot of disposable income.
So just to cap off the MAP process, each of those stages have check sheets within the My 4-Year-Old book that people can have a look through and work through. Each check sheet's got probably anywhere between 5 and 50 points on it to work through, down to specific distances, locations, those sort of things. And just to be really clear, if you see the MAP process used anywhere else, they have stolen it from us. Here you go.
All good. I talked about compound growth and we talked about diversification done right early on. I just want to give you an example of what that looks like in property. So as Warren says there, he looks for multiple easy to achieve goals. He doesn't look for the one big winner, right? One of the common mistakes that investors make is they look in the postcode that they live in. Even if they can spread their comfort level beyond that, they tend to look only within the capital city within which they live. But if we were to look at two different scenarios here, and this is going back over the last 10 years till now, okay? If we look at different strategies, of buying in different locations as you can expand your portfolio. Okay, so here we've got basically buying across 3 different capital cities in green. This is what we call diversification done right. By applying the MAP process, 10 years ago, we were looking at buying in Sydney and in Melbourne. More recently, we've been looking at buying in Melbourne and Brisbane based on where the market cycles are at and all those criteria I covered off before. The investor that just sticks to their knitting and invests in the capital city that they know, they're not exposing themselves to multiple growth markets. So you are restricted in the amount of equity that you can create, and therefore the number of properties that you can buy. You can see here in a 6-year window, a diverse investment strategy based on location has allowed you to add another 2 properties to the portfolio compared to what it has by just investing in Melbourne in this case, which is the capital city that we're in. And then as you start to extrapolate out the compound growth over time, you can see there that we are over $2 million in front in terms of the portfolio value and the equity 10 years after we start.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong, if all you can do is buy in the capital city that you live in and you can buy 3 properties, that gets you within 1% of the Australian population, as we went through at the start.
Yeah.
Portfolio value of 4 mil is not bad. This is, if you want to understand how to do it better and you want to understand how to implement the lessons learned from these successful investors that we have refined down into our strategy, this is what it looks like, and these are how the results can be better off.
Yeah, this rang true for me in the late 90s, early 2000s. The Melbourne property market really took off. But it then started to plateau, and I realised I could either sit there for a period of time and twiddle my thumbs hoping it went, waiting for it to go up again, or I could take that equity out. So I started investigating different capital cities. So it's the old point break adage, follow the perfect storm. So continually get that perfect wave of growth by following each capital city.
Yeah, and in the last webinar, after the interview with Tim Lawless, I actually provided a 20-year snapshot on growth cycles in Australia and when the different capital city markets have grown and by how much. So again, if you want to go back and check that out and get some more context around how this works and exactly what we've done, just let Justin know, justin at opencorp.com.au. There's the end result. So yeah, profit well up. Kiyosaki talked about the power of having a mentor. Okay, Warren Buffett talks about being able to stay on track and follow a process that works. Obviously, both of those are incredibly powerful. I particularly like the 2 quotes down the bottom from those guys because they directly relate to exactly where we're at today. Okay, there is never going to be a perfect time to buy property. If you're sitting here watching this and you've been researching the market for the last 10 years and you haven't yet quite found the right time, I'm talking to you. Imagine if you just invested in something average 10 years ago, you would have been so much better off. There is never a perfect time. You'll never have ideal job security. There'll always be changing circumstances. The sun will come up tomorrow. Buy for the long term and mitigate your risk. Okay, it's very easy when markets are flying. Everyone comes out of the woodwork and is happy to tell you how much money they're making from whatever they're investing in. As Warren Buffett says, only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. Okay. By applying the strategy that we have and having seen what our mentors have been through, and more recently in the last 20 to 30 years, what Cam and I personally, along with Al and Matt, have been through, okay, we understand the differences between investing in upturns and downturns, and most importantly, how to mitigate risk. Okay. We understand the market conditions. There are certain indicators that we look at that determine whether or not it's the right time to be buying, and if so, where. Okay. We've talked about your books, Cam, a couple of times. Do you maybe want to give everyone that's tuned in a bit of a taster on what they can get a copy of in the next couple of weeks?
All right, I'll give you a bit of a pre-release snapshot. So over the last, I've got a new book coming out, which will be released within the next month. I can do a pre-release for some people if they, once again, email through to Justin at OpenCorp. The second it's back from the publisher, before it's released to general public, I can get it out for those viewers who email through for a copy. The context of the book is investing in the new normal. Now, this is if I go back to early 2000s, my business partner, Al Lewison, his dad, Steve Lewison, handed us a loose leaf folder with a heap of notes in it, which was his investment strategy for the last 20 years before that, and what the lessons that he'd learned along the way. Matt, Al and I kept continually adding to that, along with Michael. When Michael joined us, the best part of 15 years ago, when we kicked off OpenCorp, 2005-ish, was when it was incorporated. The process that this white paper, which we'd called it previously, we'd constructed, formed the investment strategy that we use and our clients use. Now, this investment strategy was tested from Steve and then by ourselves. Steve started documenting it through the negative gearing reinstatement of 87, through the recession of the 90s, and all of those different points along the way that Michael said. When we had 500 or 600 clients go through the GFC, it was the first time that the investment strategy was really put to the test in a serious economic downturn. And not one of those clients had to sell their portfolio or lost money due to the GFC and because the way we structure their portfolio. So the investment strategy worked. Through this time, it was amazing that I saw, as Michael said, the COVID is not an economic downturn. We've been put on idle, or as ScoMo said, we need to build a bridge and get over it. We've been using the term, the country's been put on idle. They're sitting there waiting ready to put the foot on the gas the second this thing comes out the other side, and the stimulus will all be around the housing market. So what we've done, Michael, Matt and I have spent the last month or so is getting this white paper into shape, which basically outlines the key drivers of the market, what occurred during each one of the outcomes, right back from 87 through to today, and what the drivers are. Because investing in uncertainty, if you understand the drivers of the market and you understand what was coming through the start of COVID, we were doing pre-releases weekly to our client base, talking about what the government's going to do, what measures and levers they're going to pull, and what economic outcome that'll have to the property market. So we were predicting week on week, trying to give our clients an understanding of what was going to occur. And once you understand those levers, it's really easy to understand what's going to occur. So uncertainty becomes normal. So hence the title, Investing in the New Normal. So that book is with the publisher currently, getting chopped into shape. People can email Justin at opencorp.com.au and get a pre-release copy of it. But it's a good read. I enjoyed writing it, enjoyed working with Michael and Matt on it. So yeah, it's been good.
Awesome. Thanks, Cam. So we talked about, the power of having a mentor. We talked about our process. We talked about how we've helped clients. Just so we're really clear on exactly what we do.
Ryan and Vanessa.
cover this very, very quickly. So as we mentioned, we've been around, OpenCorp's been around for 15 years, really seriously helping clients for 12 of those 15 years after we helped some family and friends early days. And we're a business of nearly 40 property professionals. So, we are a powerhouse. We can help you not only with the investment property selection and the application of the MAP process, so all those check sheets and process and analytics, we have that team in-house. To be really clear, we are not a developer. We're not a builder. We're not a real estate agent selling our own stuff. Okay, so we are doing the analytics around where it makes sense to invest, and then we are identifying and making recommendations for clients based on their individual circumstances, their existing portfolio, and obviously our research. We have a mortgage broking team that can assist in terms of getting those right structures. So as Cam said, the way banks want to set up finance and the way investors need their finance set up to duplicate is very, very different. Get those right structures in place from day one. We have a property management team as well. Okay, so we can take care of the whole end-to-end process for you, but really where the power of what we deliver is in our Mentor for Life program. So not only you're hopefully learning something today on this webinar, but previous webinars, we've got over 300 educational videos. We've got 6, soon to be 7 books That ongoing education that we provide is to help you, navigate the market, improve your understanding, and grow your knowledge over time. As I often say to clients, it's impossible to turn up on day one of prep ready to pass year 12 maths, right? It takes some time. It's a step-by-step process. We're there to hold your hand and teach you the next bit and the next bit and the next bit and the more advanced strategy as we go, okay? We do everything for you. So if you bring the money and the motivation, we can take the actual execution of the process, start to finish, off your hands. And we're so confident with our process and what we do that we provide guarantees around it, which I'll cover next.
And you're going to cover how we get paid, Michael? Someone just questioned that one.
Yep, sure. The way that we basically make money, we charge a fee for service for all of this stuff. That fee for service drops as you become a repeat client, because obviously we can streamline the process to some degree. Okay, and where we're doing construction projects, minimising risk and maximising tax benefits through depreciation. If we're generating business for the builders, they're not paying overhead, marketing, headcount, and so on. So they basically pay us a referral fee. The fee for service that we provide, though, includes all of the ongoing mentoring and support from day one. So there's no annual membership fees or any of those kind of things ongoing for this. All of that strategic portfolio management, where we sit down and we look at your portfolio, how it's performing, what's the cash flow position, can we save you some money on your loans, are you in a position to be able to go again, what are the comparable sales, the market rent's doing, all of that stuff. We provide all that ongoing at no extra cost. So to be really clear, I said at the start, you pay when you buy. Our motivation is that you're coming back to get your next one and your next one and your next one, and that you're telling people about who we are and what we do. That's our skin in the game, as I said from the start. We also believe in having some fun along the way. I particularly like the photo bottom left-hand corner. That's Matt talking at our client night in Sydney last year. Nearly 200 clients getting a full rundown on the market outlook, the key drivers, the areas that we're looking, forecast growth and things to consider.
Yeah, these are the days that I enjoy most. You notice there's a blend there. We do client evenings where we do overviews, but we like to get our clients to get together as huge groups so they can rub shoulders with other investors, share their war stories. But for me, investing is not about rubbing shoulders with other people at night. It's about spending time with family. So we have a couple of big family days each year. Luna Parks, where was it? Gunby Park this year. We had a big one with 500 odd families out there. So I love getting our clients together, because most people in the general public don't invest, but when we can get our client base together and they can all become friends, well, to me, that's worthwhile.
100%. And like we've said, we believe that we're putting our money where our mouth is. The biggest risk, as Robert says there, the biggest risk is doing nothing. The biggest risk is the pension, provided you manage and mitigate your cash flow risk so that you're not having to cover the property without a tenant. If you're taking a long-term approach, right, you'll do okay over the long term, as we've been through. My team, when they sit down with you one-on-one, can go through and explain the details of exactly what we do, all of the guarantees that we provide, and so on. Okay. The way that it works, though, around the key risks that we've talked about today, we guarantee the time frame to get a tenant. So you can budget on worst case, and through the criteria that we've got and the property management team that we have in place, we're just guaranteeing that we'll deliver within that time. If not, we're paying you money. We guarantee there won't be cost overruns as a result, and we're providing you all the tools to maximise the cash flow that you've got, including the tax deductions that you can claim. We've lost count over the journey of how many investors have done it themselves, not been aware of what they can claim or how they can claim it, and left thousands on the table as a result. We obviously hold your hand through that whole process, but we make it simple and ensure that you're getting as much of that tax back as possible. Okay, and because of these inclusions, a chunk of our fee is tax deductible as well. But the biggest one is that we want you to, we know through downturns that there's actually higher tenant demand than not, because anyone that's got any level of job uncertainty or anyone that reads too much of the paper is unlikely to be buying a house to live in with any of that uncertainty. If they're not buying a house, they're still renting. So what we've found is that we actually see vacancy rates drop and we see rental demand increase through periods of downturn. We're prepared to guarantee it through to the end of October. We've effectively got an income guarantee where we're saying that for 5 years, your income will be guaranteed. If you don't have a tenant paying the market rent, Open Corp will be paying it for you. Anything to add on that, Cam?
No, I think the core reason for starting Open Corp, and I've had telco businesses and IT businesses in the past, and we started this business because I wanted to provide better financial outcomes or futures for people. Yes, we're talking about property here, but if rubber bands gave me high yield and good capital growth, I'd be an expert at rubber bands. You know? But property allows me to do that. What I then wanted to do was, and then Michael started on the same field, was help family and friends do it. So we created a process and a service that would take the risk and the stress out of investing. Then we wanted to do it on a larger scale. So as Michael said, we'll go to a builder and go, we'll give you 50 builds, but we want our clients to have a better spec quality and a lower price when they're buying it. And you better fix anything that goes wrong in the first 6 months. But we're so confident in the areas that we choose through our analytics team that's got the pressure on those local areas for supply, that during these periods where you've seen Melbourne and Sydney and other capital cities drop, the areas that our clients in, the prices have increased, land price has gone up, vacancy rates have dropped. So we're so confident in the quality of product and the research that we do that I put my wallet on the table and guarantee people 5 years. And obviously the asterisk there is 114,400 is worked out on our average client's rental yield. When Michael's team goes through with an individual and works out the specific property that's perfectly suited to you, that may go up or down because some properties are better, cost more, cost less. So we'll work that out on an individual basis so you know the exact figure before you come. We've also got a property management team. We manage somewhere in the vicinity of 1,300 properties for our clients. So I've just thought this period of time, what's going to give people peace of mind? Rental income and no fees. So pretty easy. So we can do that en masse because we've got the research and the buying power, and we've got the track record. So I'm quite comfortable with that.
Absolutely. So if you're concerned, with regards to vacancy and cash flow, we just want to take that away to give you the confidence to be able to step forward and obviously start your portfolio, knowing that after any downturn, as Cam said, there's always that upswing. We can be positioned for that. And you can do it for, with maximum peace of mind that income will be coming in for that 5 year period.
And that's, you're aware, for contracts signed before the end of October.
Yep. Cool. Indeed. So, guys, in terms of where we sit today, hopefully you found that beneficial in terms of some background to us and how our strategy has been formulated, the key lessons from very, very successful people. No better one to leave on than the worst performing investor wasn't the unlucky one, but the one who stayed on the bench. Okay, doing nothing will result in the pension. If you want to be able to do better, hopefully today's been the first step in, or maybe the next step in your education journey to be able to understand how that can work. Okay, as Jan Summers said and Cam talked about right off the top, know your current position. We want to be able to help you do that at no cost and no obligation. And by the way, our fee hasn't changed with those improved guarantees that we offer. It's just the confidence in the process that we've got. Okay, there's no increase to cover that or anything like that. But at no cost and no obligation, we're happy. My team will sit down, talk to you, understand your individual situation, answer any questions that you've got, and share more detail around the MAP process, some investment fundamentals, and exactly how we go about helping our clients and those guarantees and inclusions in full. Okay, so the choice is yours. You can be influenced by the hysteria, right? We can go back to 1970. properties were unaffordable back then. The paper was telling us. Imagine if you just bought one. Don't be a lemming. Take control into your own financial, into your own hands for your financial situation, and most importantly, mitigate your risk, which we've demonstrated how we can help you with that. Okay, so hopefully that's been beneficial. We hate talking about property, so we've gone a little bit over time. Thanks for hanging with us. Happy to take some questions for those that can hang around for the next 15 minutes or so. But talk to our team, and again, no cost, no obligation. Opportunity to sit down and look at your individual situation, which we obviously can't do in a group setting. We can do those over the phone, or even better, over video conference. I'm sure everyone's up to speed with video conferencing based on the current environment. The team will be in touch. If you do know, obviously, as I said, we've had 1,000 people register for both today and tonight combined. If you do want to be put at the top of the list, and you know that you really want to sit down and look at your individual situation, please email justin@opencorp.com.au. He'll prioritise that with one of the team, and they'll be in touch shortly to help you understand exactly what might be possible for you. So thanks for joining us, Cam. Anything to add on your end before we get into some questions?
No, not at all, mate. Not at all. I'm going to go and. So I've got a conference call with the States, mate, so I'll leave you to go through the questions. I've had to skim through them, and I'm fairly confident you'll be able to nail them out. But I hope, I want to wish everyone thanks for joining us, and hopefully see you at one of our client days or client nights when lockdown all finishes.